Hello, welcome to DENtalks. This is Tal, and today we have an incredible story to share. Nina Endrst is here, and she is an open book. We talk career change, dealing with deep trauma, self acceptance, anger, and not letting your story define who you are. She's a prominent yoga and meditation teacher. She leads retreats all over the world, including one of ours in August. Her practice embodies self acceptance and empowerment, and they were all influenced by her childhood and diagnosis of a chronic disease. So look, if you're someone who feels stuck or like shit that's happened to you in the past is the entire reason why nothing good happens to you in the present, this will be exactly what you need to hear. Don't forget to stay tuned because always at the end, we do a personal practice and she's going to do a 10-minute chakra meditation. I'm so excited you're here. I just think what's kind of cool about this is we've had this like weird synergy. We only met once and it was pretty brief, actually.
Did you know I didn't know you were the owner?
Oh, you didn't? I love that. You shouldn't know I was the owner.
I had no idea.
Yeah, there's no reason that you had to know that.
I know, but I thought that was so awesome. And after I was like, I like her even more. She got this playlist. And I was like, I have to be friends with this person. But like, no idea. Just thought you were just,
But she did this incredible Free People event. And yes, you had the most amazing playlist. But what I remember specifically about it, which I loved, was like, you had this incredible presence about you. You just felt like you belonged. And I knew you'd flown in the night that day, actually. You just flown in and you weren't from LA. You didn't know the Den. And there was just something about you that I'm like, you just felt like you belonged. And I weirdly felt like I already knew you, like within seconds. And even though I had to leave early because I had a baby at home, I just couldn't get over this like magnanimous presence. And I always feel like people who have that, who effortlessly, they don't even realize they're commanding like attention, are usually pretty confident within themselves. Like, does any of this resonate with you? Are you the type of person that kind of feels like anywhere can be home? Like, can you make yourself at home easily?
absolutely. And I think I've always been like that. It was less charming at some points in my life.
In what way? That's hilarious.
Because I think that I just didn't really understand myself the way I do now in this moment. So it could be obnoxious, if that fiery energy or that confidence, right, is kind of like, I always equate it to like the slow burn. Like I'm trying to now still embrace the fire in me because I'm an Aries, like through and through. But I don't want to burn the fucking house down, which is what I used to do a lot. So now I'm just trying to like have this nice fire that's nourishing and warm and like inviting instead of like burning.
It's
everything.
so true. It's like all of every quality each one of us has can go either way. It's like you can either use it for a positive or a negative. So it's so fascinating that you're talking. It's like strength, same thing. Like I tell my child who's really strong, let's please use your powers for good. What if you had to describe yourself now then in 3 words? Because it's interesting. You're talking about qualities. Like where are you in your life now? What 3 words would you use?
Strength and softness.
I like it. 2 words, but it still works. Strength. And so there's like a balance happening.
There's an and in there.
Oh, and that's right. 3 words. You're right. You got me. Fair enough.
The balance is like very key, whether it's holding space for clients, because I'm an opinionated person. That's just kind of in my blood. But I never, ever want to come off, whether it's talking to a friend or a client, like I'm in any position higher than who I'm speaking to. I don't know better. I'm a guide, but you're the best teacher, whether it's me speaking to a client or with my husband or a friend. I think it's having a good sense of who you are and also who you want to be at all times. So, yes, I'm a strong woman and I absolutely love that about myself, but I don't want to run anyone over. And I think I've done that in my life in previous lives, I'm sure. So it's just a matter of kind of like reining it in, and understanding. I think for a big chunk of my life, I couldn't quite wrap my head around that everyone else didn't think the same as me on an emotional level. So I was always ready to I don't have a problem with confrontation. I don't have a problem with speaking my mind. I'm kind of like, let's talk about it and then it'll be over. But a lot of people, are uncomfortable with confrontation and they don't want to have the conversation. And so I've learned to kind of appreciate all types of energies and kind of wiggle within the alleyways of those.
But that's so beautiful because that really is what it is. We all know we don't all react the same way because I have the same problem. It's like I will confront in 2 seconds. And then if you're confronting someone who's not used to that, they can take it personally, actually. And it gets the completely wrong reaction or effect that you're looking for. So yeah, so it's amazing when you can actually understand the energy you're speaking to, then you can approach it differently. Do you and look, you can tell you clearly are a teacher and you're a very popular yoga meditation teacher, spiritual leader, Reiki practitioner, all of that. Have and but has it let's chat about how you got there. Like clearly you were saying you've been struggling with like even the balance of your own strengths. Like were as even as a kid, you feel like you always had this in you? Was your life always like kind of one of calmness and balance? Or let's chat about like how you got where are you from? Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Connecticut. My father was in New York. He was actually in LA for a time. So I absolutely hated LA because he left after my parents got divorced for a bit and went to LA. So I was just like, fuck that place. That place sucks. But yeah, I was back and forth between Connecticut. I would visit LA a lot, but then he went back to New York. He's like a through and through New Yorker. So that didn't last that long. But no, I grew up in a really chaotic, my parents are both artists. They're really amazing people, but they're very neurotic, both of them. And they were in an unhappy marriage. So it was just constant fighting. And there was a lot of death around me. When I was 9, it was like they got separated. Both my grandmothers died within a month and a half of each other.
Oh, brutal.
Um, I was actually, now I'm just making that connection that the exact same year, which is a huge part of where I am, I was sexually assaulted. I was molested by my babysitter's son.
How old was he?
He was probably 14 or 15, and I was 9.
So awful.
So it was just like this year of like, talk about burning things to the ground. Everything around me had just crumbled, and I was a kid, and I just felt like, you know,
And then you became like super like after that, were you
I think I took a break. I took like a moment to be really sad, but it was all internal. Like I didn't speak to anybody about how sad I was. So when I went really quickly into the angry place, but I wouldn't say that like really got to the peak when I was like 13. Then I just wanted everybody around me to suffer.
up until 9, were you relatively like a happy kid or the chaos was kind of getting to you anyway?
I was always a happy kid and I was always really spiritual, which I didn't really know what to do with and I didn't realize that I was, but my parents used to call me alien because I would just say these really like far out
Like what? Like
things.
what does that mean? Like being spiritual?
When my grandfather died, I was 3 and I wasn't close to him. I was 3, and he was kind of an asshole. So we were in the car and I just had this I always had the sense that I needed to take care of everybody around me. Like I just always felt compelled to hold space. So we were sitting in the car and everybody was crying and I was silent and I just said like, "Does anybody mind if I sing?" And everyone was like, "Sure." And so I started to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which like in retrospect like I'm a little kid, but also I there was definitely some like deeper meaning to me. And I just think it's so beautiful because it was so simple to me, right? Like I just thought people are sad and I have something in my arsenal that I think will
Oh.
bring them some peace. So let's try this.
By the way, we're Skyping right now, but she has a rainbow like over her left shoulder. I'm sure it's a toy for your kid, but it's interesting. Just to bring it all full circle.
So yeah, and then, I can't remember some of the Nina stories because, I try not to latch onto them. But I was definitely in tune and connected to something.
And then divorce, death, and abuse, which I'm sure had a huge toll, obviously, came at 9, and that kind of all went somewhere else in you, kind of.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Can we talk about the abuse a little bit? So you said you got silent. So did people not know?
No one knew until I can't remember when it was, maybe a year or two, maybe. And I was watching, do you remember Nick News?
Kind of. I've heard of it.
I don't remember her name, but anyway, she was, it was this very like informative kind of show for kids about like what's right and what's wrong. And she started talking about abuse and if someone touches you. And of course, I knew that it was wrong, but I also had no idea what it was because I was 9 years old. So I just remember feeling like this overwhelming sense of shame and guilt and panic. And so I went to my room and I will never forget, I had this wooden chair and it's strange to me that instead of going to my bed where I was comfortable, I went to this chair, like almost to punish myself. And I sat there and I locked my door and I just cried for hours. And my mom finally thought I was playing or something and knocked on the door and she let me in. I let her in and I told her. And it was, it was ugly. They said that I was lying and it became this whole kind of mess. So I really just wanted it to stop so we didn't press charges or go any further with it because I was a kid and it was just,
Too
you
much.
know, it was too much.
So
Yeah.
after that, then it doesn't just go away for you. So do you just get quiet? Where do you put that? What do you do with that?
I put it all down where I think a lot of us put it, in my belly. So I just put it away and I just kind of carried on because that's what you do and that's what we do.
When you talk about carrying on and putting it away, is there, and forgive me if any of these questions are offensive because they don't mean to be offensive at all, but are there moments that you forget? And by forget, I mean like you convince yourself of your own silence. Like, are there moments you trick yourself? Or is it avoid? Like, what are the conversations you're having with yourself at this point that are internal that no one else can hear?
I pretended that it didn't happen. I just never can remember thinking about it again until maybe my late teenage years when I really was just trying to figure out why I was so angry. I mean, parents get divorced, like it's not, it, it's traumatic, but it certainly wasn't the end of the world. They were miserable together. It was better that they were not together. And I just remember like trying to figure out what it was and that would surface and I would push it back down and it would surface again and I really I think it manifested in my relationships with men in a big fucking way. Like I
Oh.
didn't trust any of them. Oh, I had really great guy friends, but as far as any sort of like sexual relationship, I had a high school boyfriend who, I lost my virginity to him and at one time he just took my wrist and it wasn't in any aggressive way. And I just had a meltdown because it was just this act of power and control. And it triggered something in me that I really wasn't expecting. So
Do you feel like there was anything that could have happened back then that would have helped process it for you at all? Or no, it's just a thing? Like, would it have helped if you were talking about it? Would it have helped if like charges were is there anything that you feel like that would have been better for my soul?
I think my mom has been practicing, yoga and meditating and Reiki since the beginning of that, since as long as far as I can remember. And for me, it was always like, so weird. What is she doing? Like, why is she this weird hippie? Isn't it funny? Full circle. But
Yeah.
so I feel like the tools were, it's hard to say because really how I feel in my heart is that I'm really happy it happened the way it happened. Like I'm happy that I didn't have any of this until I did and the language wasn't there until I really needed it. So, I don't know. I'm just not really a person to look back and say what if, I'm kind of
Right.
like this is this is. So that's what it was. And I'm grateful that it happened the way it happened, you know? So I went to college, I did that whole thing. And when I was 22, I was in this relationship, and it was really toxic because, again, that was kind of how it was playing out in my relationship with men. And I was in school in Boston and we were moving to his apartment in New York. And I knew in my body and my cells that I should not be moving into this apartment with him. And he picked me up and we drove to New York. And as soon as we pulled in, my stomach just went nuts. And I had never had any sort of symptom like this before. And I was in bed for 3 weeks. I couldn't eat a thing. I lost like 10 pounds. And I had to go home to my mom's house in Connecticut. And I was in bed for 3 months. And I lost a total of like 20 pounds. I was a skeleton. I'm a small framed person to begin with. And my mom thought I was dying. She was like, didn't know, no doctor could figure it out. And I went to acupuncture and I couldn't even walk at that point because I was just, it was so bad.
Yeah.
And I went to acupuncture and I felt so much better. I walked out of there and I was like, okay, like there's a light. And then something really terrible happened with my mother and my body just snapped out of it. It was the craziest thing what your mind can do to your body, you know, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I went back to New York and I started working again. And I remember I relapsed, or what do you call it? Had a flare, and it turns out it's Crohn's disease.
Crohn's is
So
tough.
it's like this, thing that they tell you is for life, right? Which I call bullshit on any of that because I just don't believe that's just not what I believe. But in the time when you're suffering and there's a doctor who we've positioned in our society as like godlike with the pill, with the answer, I'm like, sure, give me it, whatever, like just make me better. And so I went down that route and I got better until I wasn't again. And this happened for like years until finally I got so sick that I had to just change my life entirely. And sitting and healing that trauma, so like I had tunnel vision about it. I was like, I need to heal this. And I haven't taken a drug since.
That's incredible. So that was your breaking point.
Yeah.
Because I do find, I mean, let's talk about breaking points because I find them fascinating. It's like people weirdly need breaking points. Is there any advice? Like, do you remember, like, mentally, what if you could look back? And again, and not what ifs, but if you could look back, is there anything now you could point to give advice to people before they get to a breaking point? Like, this is the stuff you're ignoring that's happening, and the breaking point's now coming to slap you in the face to like wake you up. Is there something that someone can pay attention to? Because look, so many people out there have experienced trauma. It might not be exactly how yours look, but it's a version. And I think, and even just the trauma of just being, like you said, you didn't want to move in with your boyfriend, even just that trauma of going against your gut of what you're supposed to be doing can really take a huge toll physically on you. So what are like symptoms, and I say that in air quotes, that people can maybe pay attention to before they get to that breaking point? Or does everyone need a breaking point?
Uh, ooh, I have so many thoughts. I love a good breaking point. I love a good breakdown because I think that they're breakthroughs. They're where are you going to go? You're at the bottom. I was working in fashion and it was like the worst fucking place in the world to be. But I built this up as this was going to be my career and this is what I was meant to do. And now I'm here and my boss had, called me the C word 7 times that day. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, so my point is that like, I couldn't have gotten lower on the breakdown level.
Yeah.
Many of my clients, I would say, that come to me are at that point. Even if they don't know that they're at that point, when we start to unpack stuff, they're like, oh shit, like this is it. So I think I would say we need them, but also as far as symptoms, it's the gut, it's the intuition, it's the doubt. It's like this overwhelming doubt that we all have, and that is like really kind of capitalized on too, of like, don't trust yourself, like fear this, like, conform. And it's just, like, what do you know? Go there, do that. If this isn't serving you, you are the only one who knows that. And don't doubt that. Just
Why do
fucking
you
quit
think
But why do you think so many of us do doubt it? Because I think if you look in society today, it's actually harder to trust it than it is to doubt it.
100%. I think that we, without being an alarmist of like, we're all being watched and we're all being manipulated on a regular basis. I think that the messaging that we receive from a very young age, especially in the States, is, and I think it took me really moving out of the States to realize how manipulative the messaging is here. Everything is fear based. Everything is, don't trust yourself, trust this. Don't, don't, like homeopathic stuff and natural, that's witchy, that's woo woo, that's like, we're still living in like olden days where it's like, oh, are you a witch? It's like, yeah.
It's so true. It is very fear based. I remember when my job ended and I was, I knew very clearly I needed a break. That was the one thing that was very clear. And so when I was lucky enough to get this outpouring of support from people just calling to be like, come do this and like offering me jobs, I remember with my old boss, who I loved dearly, we always had a very different thought process. He's like, do this, come on, you have to do this. And I'm like, that sounds interesting, great. And he just laughed. He goes, fuck, you're going to take time, aren't you? I know it. You're going to be that person who actually takes time, because he knew I was like, he used to call me witchy and weird. And I was like, yeah, I know I need the time. I'm going to take the time. And that really was hard for people to process or understand or trust, because it was so different than other people, because there is a lot of fear. I mean, they teach you to have fear of there won't be a job waiting for you when you do decide to come back. You're not going to be able to survive. And for me, I always just had that outlook. But I know I can survive. I just might have to change my lifestyle. It might be a very looking life, but I'm okay with that. Like, I don't want to do something. But it is really hard for people to. It's the one thing I always try and tap into. I love that we're having this conversation because I feel like I have an instinct for it. But I always like to figure out how can we teach people how to do it, because it is a really hard thing. People get very scared, understandably, to trust something that they don't know.
I have a client who's in her 50s, and she's like this really smart, really powerful woman. And she constantly asks me, it's the beginning, is that okay? Is that okay? Did I do that? And I'm like, don't ask me. Like, you got this, So whether I'm teaching a yoga class or, the mentorship is really like where my focus is right now, because I'm just really enjoying like building people up and giving them tools and watching them thrive and build amazing businesses and get out of things, relationships or jobs or what patterns that make them miserable. I think it's just, you teaching people not to be afraid is a really thing, but it's just about empowering. It's just about being consistent about it too, and like practicing being confident, practicing how you speak to yourself. That is like such a huge part of the way it kind of unfolds, is that if we keep telling ourselves we suck or we're not good or it won't be, you know, what am I going to do? I'm not going to have any money, or I'm not going to be relevant anymore, or someone's going to take my job. It's like you have to reframe and change the conversation with yourself first before you actually do something.
Absolutely. It's know that also just because you don't know what's going to happen to you tomorrow, you also don't know what the world is going to look like tomorrow. So, and I don't mean that in like an apocalyptic way. I just mean, but right, fair enough. I do mean like as simple as you don't know what jobs are actually going to be available when you're ready to go. You don't know what your interests might be. So I wonder if also framing that too, don't just have fear and stress in what you think is now that you might not have. Like it's all unknown. So there, in some way, I find that comforting to know it's all unknown. It's not just you that's the unknown. It's all unknown, which means we're all going to figure it out, and it's all going to figure itself out for you.
Yeah. And I also say over and over again, like, isn't that kind of the beauty of it all is like you leave no room for magic to happen, and I don't mean that in like a cliche way. I mean that truly, like if you have everything planned to a T, first of all, it's not going to happen that way and you're setting yourself
Right.
up
And
for
then you're
disappointment.
exactly.
But number two, you there's no room for this amazing stuff to come into your life, like I didn't plan to meet my husband in Mexico, but I did. That was the last on my list, was meeting him there. I was like, these guys are a bunch of like burnouts or tourists. Like, I'm not trying to meet the love of my life here,
And
and
then you
in
did.
walks this like dude, and I'm like, wait a second.
It's true because even people dating, everyone's so it has to be this, 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 and that. And then they don't see all the stuff on the periphery that could be perfect for them, like on that note. So it's so interesting because what you're saying, which I love, is the more you empower yourself and the more you believe in yourself and the more you trust yourself and practice that, the easier this all becomes to take that step into the unknown. Now, to go back to like the trauma, someone who's experienced trauma, how do people do that? It feels like until they can somehow take care of their soul in that regard, it's going to be hard for them to empower themselves. I'm sure that's a little bit of what you were feeling. It's like you're ignoring half of yourself. And until you didn't ignore it, you couldn't process it. I mean, I know I'm putting words in your mouth, so feel free to jump in.
I mean, I had to be like I was literally in solitude pretty much for like 6 months. I moved to Mexico. I would go to dinner here and there, but I was practicing, and if I wasn't teaching, I was alone and pretty cut off. And I just, cried a lot and wrote a lot. And uh yeah, I think you have to look it right in the face, whatever it is, and take some of the power out of it and the person on the other side, also because yeah, he was a really fucked up, terrible, he did a really fucked up, terrible thing, but I can't live my life with that holding me back. He can't be the reason for every bad thing that happens in my life. And I think it's really easy for us to be victims, and that's a common thing, whether it's a trauma or a relationship, it's or a job. Why is this happening to me? Why did that happen to me?
So when you think about him now, does anger come up for you or does a different emotion come up?
Uh it's not anger as much as it's just this unbelievable, like, how could someone get to that point? How could someone act in such a way? And especially having a child, like looking at this, I wasn't a baby, but I was an innocent kid, and just thinking about how hurt and how damaged you can be to put that on somebody else is just something that's really sad to me. So I more just feel sadness for him. I don't feel it defines me in any way. And I used to carry it as that. I'm fucked up and I'm damaged, and I don't feel that way anymore.
So that's interesting. I want to touch on that. I think something you're kind of saying, which I love when you're saying, he did a bad thing and you used to define yourself as I'm fucked up because of this, I'm this. Now you don't let it define you. And something we talk a lot about here is that events or acts, whether done to you or you doing them, do not define a man, which I've always find so fascinating and true because there's more to someone that's inside. So like, what would you think defines someone?
Um, I think that changes for me often, but I think it's the it's the daily communication with the people closest to you. It's how you talk to yourself. How do you talk to other people? It's just it's really simple. I think we make things really complicated when they're really simple. Like, do you treat other people with respect? Do you treat yourself with respect? Like, what do you do? Like, what's important to you? I don't think it needs to be how much money you give to this charity, although I'm a big person big believer in charitable. um but I think it's just about how you conduct yourself, kind of when nobody is looking, like what's the real deal? Like, how do you speak to sister, your husband, your mother, yourself.
I love that. When you look back at yourself going through this trauma and before you kind of process it all, and I just think of so many people who are going through it, and and I know you were kind of talking about it in a way, it's like you weren't yourself. I mean, that's where like the anger came from. Is there any way, and the answer might be no here, but is there any way to keep your soul alive while going through trauma?
Hmm. I think it's alive. I don't think that I think that's kind of a mistake that we make, or a trick our minds play on us, that this somehow has taken everything from us, when it certainly takes a big part of you, and it hurts and it's confusing and it's horrible on so many levels, but it doesn't take your soul, it's just another part of you, and something to process, something to work through. And I think the mistake that we make, or to survive, it's not a mistake. I think a lot of times you have to, repress something to get from point A to point B. At 9 years old, I didn't have the tools to deal with a sexual abuse, right? I just didn't. And no therapist or mother or father could have ever given me everything I needed to process it in a way, I truly believe that, where I would be whole again and continue my life in daisies and rainbows. I think I had to get really fucking angry, drink too much, date the wrong people, take the wrong jobs, and get to a breaking point to be able to sit here and talk to people in a way that was really like, I get you. I've been there and I feel you, and we're human, and it does not mean that you will never be uh whole again, because you were never broken.
I mean, that's so beautiful. You're never broken. So you might feel broken, but you're not broken, which kind of goes back to the self-empowerment, like know to love yourself because it's the goodness is there. What advice would you give people to access the scary stuff?
So I'm big on journaling. And I think it's, even when we don't think we have something to say, it's kind of scary to sit there with all of the stuff that you say inside your head, and all of the limiting beliefs and all of the ways that you speak to yourself. And you don't really hold yourself accountable until you're like, it's on paper, like, I got to look at it, it's real. So I always encourage, my clients, and I practice what I preach, to just kind of sit and meditate and then write, or move and, practice yoga and write. Or every time I get angry or I screw up, the first place I go is to my notebook and I write about it, because it's, for me, it's a practice of getting it out.
And it probably helps bring clarity. Like you can actually see through all the bullshit. Because I feel like we all just get the noise like affects so much of our opinions of what we think's going on. And it's always such like a clear, small line of what the truth really is in that moment. But we just all get so hung up in all the bullshit around it.
Yeah. And we're also like just kind of egocentric by nature. So it's nice to be like, I don't think this is, I mean, such a basic principle that nothing's personal. And everybody's like, what? Of course it's personal. Like, and that goes back to being a victim. And, so it's nice to realize that even when we're hurt by people, right? Like, it's not 9 times out of 10, they're not doing it to hurt us, maliciously. So that's another reason I like to kind of write it out, because it's an easier way and kind of a direct line to the truth, right? You're like, did that really happen?
So you say you have a lot of clients you find come to you at like the breaking point, and it's either they're in miserable jobs or they need to make a change. Like, what is your advice? I feel like I saw you, we're talking about this somewhere, of which I love this phrase. It's, letting go versus giving up, because look, we're both Aries. I get it. I'm a hugely competitive person. I want to accomplish everything I put my mind to. And I think it takes a very different perspective of knowing when you're letting go of something in a healthy way versus when you're actually giving up. And they're two very different things.
It's like, for me, it's just it's more of a release. Like, again, like, I think it's this ego and this like idea that we have to achieve or be productive or whatever, it is. And it's like, well, if I don't do this, I won't be that. I think it's just a matter of trusting that when you release something, it's not doesn't mean that this type of thing is never going to come back into your life, right? Or it just might not be in the form that you originally thought, right? So like when I was giving birth, this is what comes to mind. I had this, like, I didn't cry when I was pregnant ever, and I'm a big crier, and I did, and I knew that it was going to be transformative, but I had no fucking idea what it was going to be like. And it was 22 hours, and I knew, yeah, yeah. And I could say, release, let go, like all I wanted, but you have to practice that. You can't, especially when a baby is crowning. Like you can't just be like release. Like you have to release. For me, it was just like, okay, I am not, like, we're contracted all the time, right? So you have to just settle into the fact that when you let go and you can breathe deeply, like trusting that something beautiful will come of that. That's just kind of how I like to think of it. My baby came. If I contracted the whole time, like he would still be in there.
Actually a really funny way to think about it. But what would you say to people like with your personality too, of like with your job that you were talking about, where you're getting called the C word 7 times a day. And in your mind, it's like, I will not fail at this job. Like I am going to do it. But now in hindsight, you're like, that job wasn't good for me. How does someone synthesize that? How does someone synthesize?
For me personally, like I'm not big on, I'm actually not competitive, except for with myself.
Me too.
I don't play that game with other people. I just feel like that's just not my bag. It never has.
That's what I meant about myself. I'm very competitive with myself. Very.
Yeah. And it's that, like, it's that fire. It goes back to that fire too. It's like the slow burn, the nourishing, the inviting, not the burn everything down. So I guess your question about, how do you kind of face something like that and know that it's time to go? How do you release that?
If someone was looking at a moment of what could be a really positive change for them, or something maybe their soul is like yelling at them for, but they don't know how to listen to it yet, how can they understand the difference in their mind of letting go versus giving up? Because I think for people, especially people who are competitive with themselves, you can get very confused with giving up because you feel like you have to accomplish everything you put your mind to.
I think that there is no such thing as giving up in some ways. I think that letting go is what it is, all it is, like if we never let go of some things, first of all, they're going to leave either way. And I say this to people either way. I'm like, you have a choice. You can let this go and make the choice for yourself to invite something better in, or you will get kicked out of this, whether it's someone breaking up with you or someone you getting fired, the decision will be made. So I like to empower people to do it themselves in a way that feels like, oh shit, I just did that. Like, yeah, it's scary, but I'm the one that decided to stand up and let go of something that wasn't good for me. I didn't wait for somebody else to control my destiny.
It's like the more you get to know yourself and actually start taking control of yourself. Speaking of which, another thing I read that you've said, which I loved, you said, the smile on my face is not permanent, but it is genuine. But I love that because I think you're being very clear to who you are, which is like, I'm not going to always smile. You're not pretending to be this like perfectly angelic being at all times, because that actually sometimes makes my shoulders go up. I get really nervous around people like that who never let their guard down. But what I loved about that, especially, oh, it freaks me out. Totally freaks me out. But how do you now, especially hearing your story and knowing like you were an angry kid for a long time, like you were, like I picture the hunched and the angry and the sour face and just the stomach boiling all the time. And I love that you're referring to like when you smile, it radiates of truth and honesty. So in getting to this phase of your life, it feels like you learned who you were. So what did you learn about yourself that surprised you the most?
Ooh, how sensitive I am, like how deeply, deeply sensitive I am. Because very often perceived as like this tough bitch. And I am a tough bitch, but and I don't apologize for that. And one of the things that I really am turned off about in this community particularly is the air of perfection, which does not exist and I don't want to subscribe to. I don't wear, I don't always wear a smile, and I'm not going to pretend, I'm just not going to pretend. So I think that I found myself to be so sensitive, and I also found that I really needed to figure out a way to make that elevate me and people instead of bringing us all down. So I think a lot of times when someone hurt me or I was affected by something, I would get pissed or, put up the wall or lash out or try to hurt them back. And now I just kind of hang back and let it sit and try to have a conversation about it. That's beneficial for both of us. Or I just straight up, leave the relationship because I don't have time or space.
What do you feel like as humans, we're always evolving and we're always working on ourselves, even when you get to such a much clearer place.
I'm clearly enlightened.
Well, what do you feel? I know, sorry. What do you feel like is your biggest struggle? Still, what do you struggle with the most? I like to ask people, what's your Achilles heel? What keeps coming back no matter?
I struggle the most right before I had my kid. I was starting to, I never pulled tarot cards for myself because it got to a place that was not good. So I only read for clients because my husband at one point was like, can we put this on hold? Because I was like, heartbreak? What is this about?
What are you doing? Right.
What's happening? And he's just like, I sitting right next to you. So I kept pulling the death card, but I also pulled this card that was it has this horse and, he's kind of looks depressed, and it's all about expectations that you place on other people. And my big work is to not expect people to meet me where I am.
Yeah, I get that. It's hard, and you realize it can be really awful for people on the other side.
But I will say that with that, gracefully letting go of friendships that are just no longer working is also something that I am now okay with. I have a really solid group of friends that most of them I've had since I was, believe it or not, in kindergarten.
Love
these are
that.
Ride or die people. And there have been people, who were in my life for a very big chunk of it, or maybe small, but now it just, we're not connecting in some way. And I have to sit back and be like, what am I expecting of this person? Do I expect them to be exactly where I am, to communicate how I do, to feel how I feel? No. Okay. So maybe this just isn't working anymore. And that's okay. We don't have to be friends with everybody. We don't have to be in a relationship that lasts forever. That's just not a standard I hold myself to,
I want to do the for you section now. Just really quickly, we just jump into, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You give me 4 answers. They're takeaways for the audience. What's the type of meditation you rely on the most?
Everyday activity style. So washing the dishes, breastfeeding my son, sitting in bed, anything that I can do, because I'm not a big sit in Sukhasana, meditate type of gal. And I don't think there's one way to meditate. So I just like to do it and weave it throughout my day.
Do you journal or have another daily practice?
Yes, I journal all the time. And my daily practice, I like to have super small rituals that make me feel grounded, whether that's legs up the wall or lighting a candle, or Palo Santo is everywhere in my house because gotta just clean all the time.
Do you have a helpful tip for a deep meditation?
For a deep meditation. Yes, I think legs up the wall or Shavasana on your belly.
I love that. Do you have a current obsession or a food or drink you cannot live without?
Coffee, always, forever.
I love that you say that, though, because it's so real. Well, that's what I love. I feel like spirituality is for everybody, everything. And I feel like sometimes people get very limited and it has to be look like a certain way or feel a certain way. So I love that.
I'm also not vegan, and I don't eat meat, but I don't believe that to have a spiritual practice, I believe in, mindful eating, but I don't think that, you have to be any one way.
I mean, I've loved this conversation because I love where you've gotten to in your life. How do you feel like all of this stuff, and I mean, you've been through some shit. How do you feel like all of this stuff has made you a better teacher?
Because I've been really, really low and really depressed and really sad. And I think we need to understand those feelings and really look our fears and our sadness and our loneliness, more importantly for me, in the face to be able to be truly empathetic and understand how to hold space for other people.
And yoga for you is what just changed everything.
Yes, and everywhere. And very much my practice is like well beyond the mat. So I don't teach that way. I don't. And a lot of times on the retreats I used to teach, certain times people would get upset if it wasn't too exercisey. And that's just not how I teach, because I teach it as a lifestyle. So yeah, you're going to be journaling and you're going to be meditating, and it's uncomfortable to sit with yourself sometimes, but that's the practice. So it's your choice to show up, but I always offer a well-rounded practice.
I mean, look, we're so lucky to have you leading one of our retreats this year, which I can't wait. And
yeah, I'm really, really excited about that. I stalked you about that, and I'm so glad I did.
no, I mean, so us too. And it just looks like so much fun, as well as it's obviously going to be an incredible experience. If you could tell the listeners how not to define themselves by their story, like how can you say that in a way that people can actually synthesize? Because I feel like you're the perfect person to say that because you don't.
I think it's still happening. So life is still going. You're listening to this, you're still living. Nothing has stopped you so dead in your tracks that it's over and you're defined and that's it. Throw your hands up. It's still happening. It's happening. So just know that, it's changing, it's flowing, it's leaving, it's coming. It's happening.
Do you feel like, I mean, now that it's true. Look, you change your career. You moved to Tulum. You met the love of your life. You guys moved back to the Hudson Valley. You have a gorgeous, 5-month-old at home. Like life is good. You do what you do love to do every day. You teach, you practice. It's pretty incredible. And now that you live life from a spiritual perspective, how do you look back at your life from that perspective? Because I mean, you and I had a very frank conversation, which I love, about what happened, how it feels, what it's like to be angry, to carry trauma, to be stuck. When you now look in, hindsight's 2020, and I'm not asking to correct anything, what's your spiritual perspective on all of it?
I was living, well, I work a lot through chakras, and I think I was just so I remember my anxiety would be so bad that I couldn't feel my feet on the ground. And because I felt so unsafe. So I think when I look back spiritually, I just realize how unsafe I felt and how ungrounded I was. And, I do a lot of like past, kind of hugging the little Nina like type stuff, because I think it's really important to embrace all of that, that time in my life, to hug that person and to say like, it's okay. And it's going to be okay, So yeah, I think it's weird, right? All these lives we live in one.
It shifts constantly. And honestly, the more you're open to it, the more you get these great lives that come in also. Look, I kind of want to end there because I think it's a beautiful way to end, which is it's okay for anyone who's going through shit to just know it's okay. And you are the perfect example of someone who has shown strength and beauty and has come out on the other end and is happy and content and still working on yourself every day. And I think it's just, thank you for your raw honesty. Also, I think it's going to be so helpful for people. And it's really, I feel like I learned a lot too. So thank you. If you're interested in going on a retreat with Nina, she's going to be in the Adirondacks August 17th through 23rd. For more information, go to www.denmeditation.com. Don't forget, we always end with a personal practice, and Nina is going to lead us in a 10-minute chakra meditation from the root to the crown.
So I would like to first give everybody a chance to settle. And for me, like I said, I don't necessarily practice in a comfortable seat. So if lying on the floor is comfortable for you, you can get set up there. I like legs up the wall. I love legs up the wall, actually. So just give yourself a minute or two to get settled wherever you're going. And once you find yourself wherever you are, I'm going to start with 3 cleansing breaths. So you're going to inhale through your nose. You're going to take a deep exhale through your mouth. In through the nose. And one more time. Through the nose. And we're just going to start with the ground, with our roots. So bringing your attention to your feet, your legs, and seeing if you can focus and bring the color red into your mind's eye. Just breathing deep down into your legs. And envision that breath is swirling around your legs and your feet, kind of clearing some space. And as you inhale, I'd like you to first exhale. Inhale, I am safe. Exhale, I am grounded. And start to move your attention up to your second chakra. And invite the color orange into your mind's eye. Bring your attention to your hips. And let your breath start to come in and out, just like the waves of the ocean. So that ebb and flow. And if you are noticing contraction, if you're noticing tension, just acknowledging that and exhaling. It doesn't have to look anyway. It doesn't have to feel like anything. Just flowing here. As you inhale, retain your breath for a moment and exhale. Inhale, I trust and I flow. I trust and I flow. And start to come up to your third chakra, your solar plexus. This is a bright, bright yellow. Right above your navel. Inhale, I am powerful. Deep exhale. Inhale, I am strong. Deep exhale. And start to come up to your heart space. And color green. And here, place your hand, your left hand on your heart. Just feel your heart beating, and your breath, the rise and fall of your chest. Take a deep inhale and a deep exhale. I am open. Take a deep inhale. I am love. Moving up to your throat. You can let your hands drop down into your lap. Start to envision the color blue. Take a deep inhale. Clear some space here. I speak my truth. Deep exhale. Deep inhale. I speak my truth. And bring your attention up to your third eye, the space right between your eyebrows. Deep, deep blue. Take a deep inhale. I trust what I see. I trust that I know. I trust what I see. I trust that I know. And finally, bringing your breath, your attention to the crown of your head, and place both hands on your crown. If you're seated, you can lift your spine so you're sitting a little bit taller. Take a moment to ground your seat. If you're lying down, just simply taking your hands on your crown. Take a deep inhale from the depths of your belly all the way up your spine to the crown of your head. And hold. And a deep exhale. Inhale, I am awake. I am connected. I am awake and I'm connected. And start to visualize the color white. And let that white light, that breath, wash over your body, your physical, your subtle, your emotional. Just imagine yourself bathing in this white, cleansing, healing light. And bringing your hands to your heart center and start to rub your palms together. Create some heat. And when your hands feel warm, you're going to place on your body anywhere physical or emotional that you feel could use a little extra space, some more love. And just feel the energy of your hands pressing into your body. And feel that part of your body pressing back into your hands. Namaste.